It was supposed to be a quiet evening, one of those nights when the stars seemed to hum softly over Beijing, when every streetlight flickered like a silent witness to something about to happen. But no one could have imagined what the cameras would capture that night, or how one word, just one no, from Wang Yibo to Xiao Zhan would send an emotional storm through the fandom, shaking hearts across the world. The story begins at a private event, something elegant yet low-key, attended by a handful of industry elites. Wang Yibo, ever the enigma in his tailored black suit, stood by the glass window overlooking the glowing city skyline. He looked calm, distant, the kind of beauty that carried mystery like perfume. Xiao Zhan entered moments later, dressed in soft beige, his presence radiant and calm, but his eyes filled with something heavier. Anticipation, maybe. They hadn't seen each other in weeks. Rumors had been swirling about a disagreement between them, creative differences, conflicting schedules, and whispers of unspoken feelings that neither dared to name. The air between them had been tight with silence for too long, and everyone present could sense the tension brewing beneath their perfect smiles. As Xiao Zhan approached, every movement felt cinematic. The world seemed to pause, waiting. Cameras clicked quietly in the background, though no one knew what they were capturing would become one of the most discussed moments in Sea entertainment history. Xiao Zhan stopped right in front of Yibo, his voice low but edged with emotion. "Yibo," he said, his tone soft but weighted, "I think we need to talk about what happened." Yibo didn't turn immediately. His reflection in the glass looked like a man torn between pride and pain. Finally, he turned around, his sharp eyes locking on Xiao Zhan's face. The room's energy changed instantly. It was like watching a storm approach over still water. "What do you want to talk about?" Yibo asked, his voice steady, yet something in his expression betrayed a hidden ache. "About us," Xiao Zhan said quietly. The two simple words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. Every whisper stopped. Even the faint music from the background seemed to fade into silence. Yibo's brows furrowed. His lips parted slightly as if to speak, but no words came out at first. Then, with a calmness that almost seemed unreal, he exhaled and said the one word no one ever expected to hear. "No." The sound was soft but final, echoing in Xiao Zhan's heart like thunder. For a moment, Xiao Zhan just stood there, his face still, his eyes blinking as if trying to understand what just happened. The warmth in the room vanished. All that remained was the chill of reality, slicing through every unspoken feeling they'd both tried to hide. Wang Yibo turned away, his jaw tight, his hand slipping into his pocket. "It's better this way," he murmured, almost to himself. "You know it too." But Xiao Zhan didn't move. He just stood there, his chest rising and falling as he tried to steady his voice. "Better for who, Yibo? For you, or for the people watching us?" That line hit like lightning. Everyone who had been pretending not to listen froze. Yibo's eyes flickered, that guarded wall around him cracking for just a second. "You think I don't care?" he said quietly. "I've always cared, Xiao Zhan. Maybe too much. But sometimes caring means walking away before everything breaks." The crowd's silence became suffocating. The two stood there, trapped between what they wanted and what the world expected. A soft sigh escaped Xiao Zhan's lips. His eyes glistened under the golden light, sadness and disbelief painted across his face. "So that's it," he whispered. "After everything." Yibo didn't answer. He couldn't. His silence said more than words ever could. The night continued, but for them, time seemed to have stopped. Later, as the cameras rolled and fans dissected every frame, social media exploded. Did Yibo really reject him? What did Xiao Zhan mean by us? Was it about friendship, or something deeper? The internet burned with theories, screenshots, and slowed-down clips of their conversation. Every blink, every sigh, every glance was analyzed like sacred scripture. Yet behind all the noise, no one knew what truly happened after that no. Some say that Xiao Zhan left the venue quietly, slipping away through a side door, his face hidden beneath a cap. Others claim Yibo followed him out moments later, and the two were seen talking in the shadows, their voices too low to be heard but their gestures full of emotion. If that second story is true, it paints a very different picture. Perhaps Yibo's no wasn't rejection, it was restraint. A desperate attempt to protect something too fragile to survive in the spotlight. Maybe it wasn't no to Xiao Zhan. Maybe it was no to the chaos that loving him would bring. Because loving someone like Xiao Zhan, openly, fiercely, meant risking everything. Their careers, their images, their peace. Days passed, but the tension didn't fade. Every fan meeting, every interview, every accidental glance caught on camera became another spark. Even their silences spoke volumes. One night, a fan-recorded clip from a backstage rehearsal leaked online. In it, Yibo was heard saying softly, "I didn't mean to hurt him." It wasn't clear who he was talking to, but the internet decided instantly it had to be about Xiao Zhan. The fandom split into theories. Some defended Yibo's choice, saying he was protecting both of them. Others accused him of coldness, claiming Xiao Zhan deserved more. But one thing was undeniable. The emotional electricity between them refused to fade. Weeks later, during a televised interview, the host dared to mention it, casually, like testing fire. "So, Yibo," the host asked with a knowing smile, "there's been a lot of talk about that night with Xiao Zhan. Do you have anything you'd like to say?" Yibo looked up, expression unreadable. The studio lights glowed against his face, turning his features into something almost sculptural. He didn't smile. He didn't deflect. Instead, he said softly, "Some things are better left unsaid. But silence doesn't mean I don't feel." It was the kind of line that sent fans into meltdown again. Somewhere out there, Xiao Zhan was watching that interview. Maybe he smiled sadly. Maybe he understood exactly what Yibo meant. Because sometimes love isn't about saying yes, it's about saying no when your heart is screaming otherwise. Months later, they were seen together again at a private film wrap-up party. Not as close as before, not distant either. Their eyes met across the room, and for a fleeting second, the world felt like it had stopped again. There was something in that look, familiar, tender, unspoken. And though neither said a word, everyone who saw it knew. That story wasn't over. It had just taken a pause. The no that broke the fandom might one day become the yes that heals it. Because real connections, the kind that shake the soul, don't vanish with one word. They linger in the silence, in the spaces between what was said and what was meant. So maybe Wang Yibo said no to Xiao Zhan that night. But maybe, deep down, his heart whispered not yet. And that's what keeps everyone watching, waiting, hoping, for the day when that unspoken yes finally finds its voice. The world saw just a moment, a single, shattering no that rippled through the fandom like a tidal wave. But what they didn't see was everything that came after. What happened when the cameras stopped flashing, when the applause died, and when two men who had shared laughter, music, and silence were suddenly standing on opposite sides of an invisible line. The night felt heavier than before. The air outside was cold, biting against the soft glow of the city lights. Xiao Zhan stood in the empty parking lot behind the venue, his breath visible in the night air, his heart thudding like it was trying to break free from his chest. His phone buzzed again and again. Messages from their team, from fans, from people trying to control a story that was already out of control. But none of that mattered, because the only person he wanted to hear from had already said no. And yet, even as he walked away from the lights, he couldn't stop replaying the moment. The way Yibo's jaw tightened, the quiet tremble in his voice that didn't sound angry, just sad. Inside, Yibo sat alone in the green room. The echo of that word, his own word, kept hitting him like a drumbeat. No, no, no. He hadn't meant for it to sound so final. He hadn't meant for it to hurt so much. His reflection in the dressing room mirror looked like a stranger. The sharp suit, the perfect hair, the calm face, it was all armor. Behind it, his thoughts were chaos. When Xiao Zhan had said, "What about us?" it wasn't just about friendship or work. It was about the unspoken bond they had built in the quiet corners of their world. The smiles exchanged off camera, the late-night calls, the silence that said more than words ever could. Yibo rubbed a hand over his face and exhaled shakily. "I said no," he whispered to himself. "But did I really mean it?" Outside, the night was restless. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, like the sky itself couldn't hold back the emotion. And in that storm, fate decided to write another scene. As Yibo finally left the venue, umbrella in hand, he saw a figure standing near the gate, soaked, unmoving. Even from a distance, he knew who it was. That stance, that quiet defiance, it was Xiao Zhan. He hesitated, his grip on the umbrella tightening. Every instinct told him to walk away, to keep things professional, distant. But his heart, it pulled him forward. Yibo approached slowly, each step echoing louder than the rain. "You'll get sick," he said quietly, holding the umbrella above Xiao Zhan's head. Xiao Zhan didn't move. He didn't even look at him at first. Then, softly, he asked, "Why, Yibo? Why did you say no?" The question cracked through the night like thunder. Yibo swallowed hard. He wanted to lie, to say it was nothing. But the truth was clawing at his chest. "Because, if I said yes, I wouldn't be able to stop." Xiao Zhan turned to him, eyes shining in the dim light. "Stop what?" "Stop caring. Stop wanting. Stop choosing you over everything else." That was it. The truth laid bare in the rain. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the storm filled the silence between them. Xiao Zhan's lips trembled, a mixture of heartbreak and understanding. "You think pushing me away will make it easier?" Yibo looked at him then, really looked at him, his hair plastered to his forehead, the raindrops running down his cheeks like tears. "No," Yibo said softly. "It's already the hardest thing I've ever done." And for just a moment, time bent around them. The rain seemed to fall slower. The city noise faded. It was just them, two souls caught in a storm they didn't know how to escape. Xiao Zhan stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then don't." Yibo's heart thudded painfully. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But he knew what that yes would cost. The scrutiny, the rumors, the endless noise of a world that never lets love stay private. "I can't," he said, his voice breaking. Xiao Zhan's shoulders slumped, his gaze falling to the ground. "You already said no once. Saying it again won't make it hurt less." And with that, he turned and walked into the rain, leaving Yibo standing there, umbrella trembling in his hand, the weight of regret pressing down like thunderclouds. Later that night, when Yibo returned home, the silence in his apartment was unbearable. He sat at his piano, his fingers brushing the keys but never playing a note. Every melody reminded him of Xiao Zhan. Every pause reminded him of the things he didn't say. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, Wang Yibo, the man who never cried in public, never broke, felt tears fall silently down his face. Across the city, Xiao Zhan was staring at his phone. He had typed a message dozens of times but never sent it. Finally, he whispered into the dark, "You didn't have to protect me from your heart, Yibo." Neither of them slept that night. By morning, social media was on fire. Fans had spotted them leaving the venue at the same time. Some even caught blurry photos of them under one umbrella. The internet buzzed with hope, heartbreak, and theories. But the real story, the raw truth of that no, was something only they understood. It wasn't rejection. It was fate, a desperate attempt to protect something that had grown too precious to risk. Because love, in their world, wasn't just about saying yes. It was about surviving the storm long enough to say yes later. And so, even after the world moved on, the memory of that night stayed alive, in whispered fan edits, in poetic captions, in the way Yibo's eyes lingered on Xiao Zhan during interviews, like he was remembering something he could never forget. Maybe one day, he'll find the courage to turn that no into something softer. Maybe one day, they'll stand under a gentler sky, where love doesn't have to hide behind silence and fear. Until then, that night remains suspended in time, two hearts standing in the rain, one too afraid to say yes, and the other too brave to stop asking why. The night Wang Yibo said no wasn't the end of their story. It was the painful beginning of something neither of them could escape, the realization that sometimes saying no is just love's way of saying not yet. If you were moved by this story, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps these emotional stories alive and helps us bring you even more breathtaking, heart-tugging tales about Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan that will leave you speechless. Stay tuned. The next chapter is coming soon, and it will blow your mind.